Hello everyone, I hope you're doing great today. Make sure you check out my Instagram at Joe the Insomniac and the podcast in the description below. So for today I'd like to share this message. If you want to go straight to the stories, then check out the timestamps in the description below. I think it's extremely important when dealing with mental health issues and other things to not put too much pressure on yourself. Try not to view your days as successes and failures. Just understand that it's a process and something that will take time, and it's a journey, not a destination. Because if you view it as success or failure, that can really put you in a bad mood and cause your thoughts to spiral, so just be aware of that. So I hope you're all doing great and enjoy these stories. Take care. I was a park ranger before, and I'm not gonna lie to you, it was the best job that I ever had in my life. It also gave me a deep understanding of the woods and what was normal and what wasn't. And I can tell you, this one day I was in the woods on my own with just my dog off duty. Nothing normal happened to me. So I decided to go for a nice evening walk with my dog. I loved him. I still do to this day. He's a really nice, well-behaved German Shepherd who's very sensitive to other people's emotions. So we start off on the walk like normal. We eventually find a rock to sit down and rest on for a little while. I'm going through some notes when I realise that my dog has sat bolt upright and isn't responding to anything that I'm doing. I'm really used to this dog laying on my feet or wanting its belly rubbed, so I know something's off. Now I kid you not, the second I look up, I meet eyes with this creature no more than 20 feet away. I don't know how to describe this thing other than some albino Bigfoot with glowing red eyes. I see it for 1 second and it suddenly darts off into the forest. My dog still won't move or make a sound. Adrenaline hits me and I quickly call out for my dog to start running. It doesn't respond at all at first and I shout "come on" and it lets out this horrifying chirp. We ended up running all the way back to my house. I never told my wife exactly what happened and my dog still won't go to this part of the forest today. I still have no idea what that thing is. In all my years of experience of being a park ranger, I've never seen anything like it. I could have just played it off as my imagination, but my dog has never acted like that before, and they say animals can sense things that you can't, and I think that's why it was acting so strange before I looked up. I live in a tiny town in northern BC. We're surrounded by a lot of untouched forests and beautiful rivers. My family lives out in the country, and we're about 10 minutes away from an uninhabited valley. It has an old road going through it from ages ago, and it had an old pioneer homestead that we could make our way down to. From a young age, I hated going to this place with my family. I had no reason to, despite it so much. Everyone that visited it always said how beautiful it was, but for me, I always got this sick feeling in my stomach. My sighting was from when I was very young. Soon I realised not many will believe me, but it stuck with me. I tell you that now. My family was showing a cousin from Australia this place, and I was sitting on my dad's shoulders while the adults walked. Now the road we're on had a large shrub on either side. In BC, we had berries called saskatoons and bushes that stretch out, which are tall and thick. Because I was on my dad's shoulders, I could see over these, but nobody else could. I remembered looking over to the other side of this, and I can see something massive and white walking on 2 legs into those trees. As a dumb kid, I yell out "polar bear," which obviously my parents ignored. There's no polar bears. And that was that. Still, no idea what I saw. I'm sure it could be a rational thing like an albino animal, but I don't know. But this is my neighbour's sighting. My neighbour, who is also the closest thing I've had to a grandfather, lives in a spot that overlooks a large field with the valley below. A few years ago, he told us of a night when he watched what he thought was a helicopter coming in to land in a large field below his home. Right as it looked like it was landing, it shot straight up and disappeared. He's a pretty serious guy too, and he's convinced he saw something he shouldn't have. And now my sisters. My youngest sister was driving home on our country road after a late shift. She remembered seeing two dark people walking in the pitch black, thinking, wow, idiots, no reflective clothes or anything. Just as one of those things turned and glances at her, it has green eyes which skewed and did not appear to be human. She glanced quickly at her clock and back up again, and they disappeared. I was DJing at a wedding in a little village about 100 kilometers from my city. I packed up everything once things were going down and was the last one out of there at 3 AM. I start to drive down the highway and see a big orange glow emanating from the other side of a ridge on the other side of railway tracks. I decided to check it out as it was even and smooth. I've never seen a light like it before. Was thinking it might be some huge bonfire for the wedding's after party. I had to drive up 1 or 2 kilometers to cross the tracks and the crest for the ridge, and once I did, the light was still off on the horizon. I drove towards it for a few kilometers, but it didn't seem to be getting any nearer. I decided it wasn't a bonfire and that I didn't want to get myself into trouble, so I turned around, heading back to the city. 50 kilometers later, I get to the main highway, so I decide to look back, and the light was just as big in the sky as it had been in the village. I looked back at the news the next day and found out what happened. A few underground gas station storage tanks had ruptured and combusted, which causes an absolutely massive fire, and there's no option but to let it burn out. It ended up burning for days.
This happened last Friday, and I'm still stumped. For reference, I'm a male in my late 20s, and I live with my girlfriend, who is currently away on business. I work for a large financial institution in the UK, and often work till very late, as I hate bringing home work. For some background info, we bought our current house a few weeks ago, and during the moving process, I was away with work, leaving it down to my partner and a few friends. My car has also recently had a complete electronics failure, so we were down to just using her car. The house itself is located in a small gated community off a country road on the outskirts of an upmarket town in the UK. It's surrounded by woodlands, and if you didn't live there or know someone who does, chances are you wouldn't have heard of it or even knew it existed. In total, there are 8 houses in the community, and the main gate gives access to the first 6, where my house is located, and then there's houses in the community. In total, there are 8 houses in the community, and the main gate gives access to the first 6, where my house is located, and then there's a further 2 gates on the top of the road, which lead to 2 very large mansion-style houses. The houses which haven't got individual gates are about 100 feet away from each other and have an enclosed rear garden, and the neighbours are all business types, who are very often in work and keep themselves to themselves. Anyway, about 2 days after leaving for my business trip, I get a call from my girlfriend who seems shaken and tells me that there's a man standing in the garden, and that she can't see his face but he's walking around and crouching in the tree line. So concerned, but not 100% convinced, as she does have a vivid imagination, and it's the first time she's been home alone in our new house, I tell her to lock the doors, go to bed, and call the police if she sees him again. I return to our city's train station on Tuesday, and agree with my girlfriend that she'll pick me up in her car. Then I'll take it home as she schedules to go to Manchester for a conference. I meet up with her, grab a coffee, see her off to her train, then drive her car back to our house. The time is roughly 9 PM. I park the car in the driveway, head inside, shower, watch some reruns of King of the Hill, then head to bed. Then get woken up by a light shone into the bedroom window from downstairs. I get up to investigate, crouching to avoid being seen, and head into the study next to our bedroom and open the curtains to cover some French doors that lead to the small balcony. My heart drops when I see the man has now moved towards our back door and is trying the door handle. The house is in an L shape, so although I can't see him, he can't see me without moving around from the back door. He stops for a while, begins flashing the light on and off back into the woods, before walking calmly back into them. I call the police and make a report. Nothing happens on Wednesday, but on Thursday, when I'm giving our cat a bath, she just thinks she needs them. I hear the garage door being messed with. I'm in the bathroom directly behind the garage, so I move into the kitchen to get a knife, before heading to the garage to check what's going on, when the noises stop, and I hear running down the driveway and away from the house. I call the police and they send an officer around to check the property. All they find is some knife marks and scuffs on the bottom of the garage. On Friday, I get my car delivered from the dealership and decide to work from home. I also park my car in the garage, leave my girlfriend on the drive. At around 11 PM, I'm in the upstairs study, listening to music and working, when I find myself freezing. I thought I was going to stop breathing as I felt someone watching me, and turning to face the French doors, I see a man, nondescript looking, around 35, wearing a coat and gloves, carrying what looked like a torch, standing on my balcony. Our eyes met. Now filled with rage, I go for one of my golf clubs from my golf bag and charge towards the door. He climbs down off the balcony and runs into the woods. I've never seen this man in my life before, but I am sure it's a man that's been causing problems in my life recently. It's also dawned on me that he would have only seen my girlfriend before, and only seen her car. Maybe he thought she lived alone. I've notified the police and have brought some more security devices to install on the property as well, and I've also parked my car in the drive of hers. We don't know who he is or why he's doing this, but we're hoping it won't happen again. This took place a couple of years ago, when I was still dating my ex. Him and his dad had adopted a Rottweiler German Shepherd mix from a shelter. The dog was really aggressive towards strangers and other animals. It took a couple of months for him to warm up to me, but eventually we bonded, and I would occasionally be cuddled up on the couch with him and take a nap. It got to the point where he would push people aside, so all 88 pounds of him could be with me on the couch, instead of someone else sitting next to me. During the summer, my ex and me were house sitting for his dad, who was on vacation with his girlfriend. My ex would usually be home to walk the dog. He was way too strong for me, but this time he was at work, and I had to walk the dog. We had ordered a special harness for him beforehand, hoping it would make him pull less. My ex and his dad didn't live in the safest of neighbourhoods, and it was getting dark out while I went into the woods to go on our walk. I let the dog run around by himself, but kept his harness on. Since he was a very aggressive dog towards other people and other dogs, I'd like to keep it on so I could call him as soon as I saw someone else and get him on his leash again. For this reason, I was kind of on edge and looking around me all the time. We weren't walking for too long when I saw a group of guys coming up in front of me. They had their hoods on and kept their heads low while clearly whispering to each other and nodded their heads towards me. I looked behind me and another group of guys was approaching me from that side. I realised it was dark out. I was a 16-year-old girl walking by myself in the woods. The dog was running off somewhere and couldn't be seen in the dark, but I had his leash in my pocket. The guys hadn't noticed I had him with me. I quickly called him to my side, and I heard his paws loudly coming towards me while he was growling. He pushed himself against my leg and loudly started growling at the guys. I told him just to keep walking or I'd command the dog to attack. Believe me, this wasn't a small dog and he growled like a bear. Luckily, the guys quickly walked in another direction and I took the fastest route home again. It took me a while of cuddling on the couch to get calm again, but I'm so grateful the dog listened this well. He was very protective of me, and he noticed me being scared. My ex and me broke up years ago, and I have no idea if my saviour dog is doing well, but thanks for protecting me that day. I don't know what could have happened if you weren't there.
I was up in the middle of nowhere, on some mountains in rural Ireland, and I come across hundreds and hundreds of bones from different animals. It doesn't make sense why it's up so high. It is obviously normal to see a skeleton in the wilderness, but this huge pile of bones is odd. Some were from sheep, others from cats and dogs, and some really look like they're from humans. It's weird because we don't have any predatory animals in Ireland. The only thing that could have gathered it would have been a person.
Forgive me if the way I write about this seems light-hearted. I'd like to say it's a way that I cope with it, and it's just the kind of person I am. Also, forgive me if this is really long. Now, I'd like to start off this day by saying that most consider me an intimidating person by nature. My close friends don't really believe that, but they know that I most definitely do not mess around when it comes to certain situations, whether it's telling someone to go away, as much as I hate to admit it, getting physical with someone. I've never really had someone approach me in public thinking of getting the best of me, if that makes sense. About half a year ago, I was at my then house rolling some small joints with my girlfriend. I live somewhat in the middle of nowhere, and there are a lot of trees in my area, and they're also in my backyard. I wouldn't classify it a massive forest, but it's not small enough to simply be a grove. There's wildlife there though. My girlfriend and I hadn't smoked much that day, and we were home alone, and seeing as we could do anything we wanted, we decided, yeah, let's smoke while taking a bit of a nature walk. It seemed like an amazing idea at the time. My girlfriend sat next to me while I rolled it up. We were talking about random stuff and listening to heavy metal as I focused on rolling those sweet spliffs. Can I mention, those joints were absolute pells. Anyway, I had finished rolling, and we decided to finally leave my house and walk into the plain woods, which at the time had never been intimidating to me or anyone I'd been in there with, unless they were just really scared by nature or had some anxiety issues. I have the joints in my back pocket and we leave. We're walking through my backyard towards one of many trails from my place. I should also mention it was summer, so it was only 7 PM and it wouldn't be getting dark for maybe 2, 3 or 4 hours. We light up for about an hour or so, it's fine. We just talk and kiss a little bit. Basic stuff really. We're on the second joint, just walking along the path, and we see this massive flat rock, like a pancake boulder. We're like, hell yeah, and we sit on it and lay down. The two of us just sit there for a while, holding hands, and passing the joint between us. Maybe 30 minutes pass, and we start hearing noises. I'd like to mention by this point, the sun will start to set soon, maybe another 30 minutes. We're obviously really freaked out by the sounds. At the time, we just looked at each other, and internally blamed it on the weed making us a little paranoid. There was wildlife in this forest, as I mentioned. We were trespassing in their backyard, so why would we mind a cute bunny? After a while of silence, we hear that noise we both know damn well isn't an animal. Now that I think about it, it sounded like someone running something sharp against a solid but jagged surface, like a rock. It was pretty far away, but somehow it was loud enough that we heard it. It was faint though. We look at each other and immediately sit up. We don't see anything. I stand up and urge her to do so as well. This most definitely wasn't the forest fairies. We stand up for a minute or so, and then we hear a big snap, like a tree branch getting stepped on with a ton of force, and then fast footsteps, like some dude is sprinting. I freak out and go into panic mode, as I'm worried to admit. And of course, we were deep into these woods, and I urge my girlfriend to run as fast as she can towards my house. Now, Kimber and I aren't necessarily sporty people. We were more of the academic bunch our whole lives. We weren't completely out of shape, but looking back on it, it would have been a hell of a lot easier if we did cross country or something. Kimber runs in front of me, and is a little farther ahead. We are on trails at this point, and the twigs and leaves are completely shredding our faces, neck, legs and arms. We hear this person who is running, obviously running after us, start hooting and hollering, like some damn creep or something. This makes us really scared, and obviously we run faster. We're sprinting, huffing and puffing like a fat kid. This person is unfortunately closer at this point, and I look back and I see him. He's an older guy, maybe 40 years old, give or take. His hair is long and really thin, and he's scraggly looking. This makes me pure cement, of course. I yell at Kimber to hurry up and she does. I look behind me again and he's somehow gaining on us. Kimber makes a turn and I recognise it being the straight to my house. The turn was abrupt and I thank Jesus because this guy must have been too close to process a turn. We turn and see the lights of my house in the darkness. Seeing this beacon of hope makes us run harder. The guy can't be seen and we make it into my cleared backyard. My girlfriend runs up my back porch, steps and rips the sliding door open, letting me in and locking it. She slams the blinds down to cover the door and we make sure all the doors and windows are locked. I fill my back pocket for my phone and realise of course it's in those trees. My girlfriend's phone is dead. No house phone because who has one of those these days? It was a burden at the time though. My girlfriend starts having a panic attack and anxiety attack. I'm not sure which one of those it was. I plug her phone in and it starts charging. I turn all the lights off except for those by our doors. I saw no sign of the man for the rest of that night, and for the rest of the time I lived there. Her phone charged and we called the cops and they surveyed the area but found nothing. It was terrifying for me and I can only assume it was worse for my girlfriend who has anxiety. I don't know what the man wanted that day, but it can't have been good.
A few years ago, my friend and I were staying in a hotel at a horse show we were competing in. We're probably 16 at the time, so her mum was staying with us too. I remembered it being a sketchy hotel. We even brought some sleeping bags and our own pillows because it wasn't clean. One night, my friend Megan and I went to the hot tub without her mum to unwind after a long day. When we got there, there's a man sitting in a chair by the pool, fully clothed. I didn't pay much attention to him, but it only occurred to me later how weird it was that there's a guy there with all his clothes on, when my friend and I are the only other people there. Almost immediately after Megan and I got there, he got up and left. Megan and I got in, and maybe 10 minutes later, these girls that look a little older than us come in. Megan and I don't think much of it, talking about our day, until one of the girls catches us and realizes that we're talking about a horse show and says something like, "Cool, so you're staying at this hotel?" We said yes, that we're staying here for a 3-day event, and we just make small talk. At this point, Megan mentioned that we're there with her mum. There was nothing weird about what the girls said. It was just weird that they're talking to us since they were obviously older and we don't know them. Eventually though, they invited us back to their hotel room. Megan and I are understandably apprehensive and said we had to get up early to need bed. The girls were persistent, saying we could come and hang out and they're looking for some new friends, which seemed weird since, like I said, we're in a hotel in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. Not exactly the place you take a vacation with your friend to meet new people. They even said we could stay over with them, so we wouldn't have to go back to sleep with Megan's mum. Megan and I were insisting that we had a long day and we wanted to go and sleep, not hang out. But eventually we got up and left because they wouldn't stop talking about it. At the time, Megan and I decided not to tell her mum because we realised it's a weird situation and didn't want her mum to ban us from going to the hot tub alone. It wasn't until years later we realised that it could have been human trafficking because the man that was in the room alerted the girls of our presence to come back after us. It still makes my skin crawl.
Okay, so this happened last night, so I'm still pretty freaked out. To preface this, the other night I got followed as well, but only for about a block, and later ended up talking to those guys, and they were just messing with us, and ended up being super sweet. But there's another story for another subreddit, which helps to explain my mentality throughout the beginning of this whole experience. Also, the town I live in is usually regarded as one of the safest in the state, so I was being really naive, partly because of that fact. So, last night, two of my friends, a guy in the front seat and a girl in the back seat, and I, a girl, were driving around after seeing a movie and eating dinner. I was driving a family member's car because it was dark and one of my headlights was out. The car I usually drive brakes and turns like an old piece of crap, whereas this car, a newer, better model, brakes and turns like butter. It's so smooth. My friends and I get into a conversation about this and really wanted to test it out. We were right near my town's high school, so I pulled into a massive parking lot in the back, where I thought I could drive around and do some quick turns and stops without wrecking into anything. I pretty much thought we were alone, because in my mind, who hangs out at a high school at 9:30 on a Sunday night? So I went in, did maybe 3 laps, and after about 5 minutes we left. No harm done. After we left, we noticed a car come out of the parking lot after us. I didn't see where they came from, but maybe they were just leaving too. So I kept driving without really thinking about it, but after a couple of turns and about 10 minutes, these guys were still behind us. So I kept driving for a while, trying really hard to get them off my ass. But they kept so close that even when I did use my signal, they could tell exactly what I was going to do before I even did it. I didn't want to call the police, because it hadn't been a complete wait period after getting my license yet, so I wasn't supposed to be driving any of my friends around, and I really didn't want to lose my license. At that point, I was still somewhat confident they were just messing with us, like the guys the night before, so I pulled into another, pretty empty parking lot, bad mistake, and waiting to see if they were going to get out. They pulled in like 25 feet away from me, in T-bone position, turned on their brights, and about 4 high school age guys got out. I made sure to keep my car in drive with a foot on the brake, just in case we needed to haul us out. Finally, one of them walked up and started knocking at my window and yelling, "Roll it down!" So instead of doing the smart thing of letting them get out of the car and then getting the hell out of there, I cracked my window. Learn how to effing drive. It's assholes like you that get the cops called on the high school parking lot all the time. The guy who was aggressively knocking at the window shouted. "Okay, sorry," was all I could reply, trying to keep my tone. The guy who just talked to me stepped back a little, still shouting, but I was honestly too flustered to remember what, and one of his friends came a bit closer and yelled, "And you guys were effing frying stuff at our car." "God no, absolutely not, we would never," I explained, still trying to not sound upset or scared. Finally, all 4 guys backed up a little, and one from the back, who hadn't spoken yet, said, "Well, okay, but come back and we'll beat him up. He looks like a pussy anyway," looking at my friend. Then, after some silence and hesitation, they got back in the car and left. My friend and I just sat there for, I don't know how long, in just silence, until my friend in the back seat broke said silence, her voice shaking a little, with a sentence that perfectly summed up that entire encounter. What the hell? And with that, I took my foot off the brake and left the scene of what had just gone down. So, I don't want to see those aggressive parking lot boys again.
My boyfriend John and I went to hang out with his best friend called Mike and his current girlfriend. She knew about a party that's going on with some of her childhood friends who just finished their high school. So we arrived to the middle of nowhere. We see a bunch of people hanging out in front of yards of a few homes, drinking beer and just hanging out. It was very strange to me. We felt out of place. People were whispering about us and pointing at us. I assume because it's a small town where everyone knows each other, so the boys start mocking my boyfriend's shirt, a Lacoste polo, saying he's rich. Now my boyfriend was not rich, got a lot of hand-downs from his boss after he gained a few pounds, but we laugh it off. After a little bit, we're just standing around, and someone decided that we're going to a friend's house who had a pool. We all follow, thinking someone's actual home might be less strange than hanging out in front of random people's yards. Now we eventually arrive there, and there's some girls in the pool who are fully clothed. They seem nice enough. Some people are hanging outside of the driveway. I have a prosthetic leg, so I get tired if I stand up for too long. I sit on the back of the truck. After a while, a dude approaches us and sits down next to me. I was pretty naive at the time. Now, I grew up in a small town from a different state. The dude started telling us how he's from New York, questioning my life. Then he tries to touch me, saying I was cute or something. My boyfriend was there, so I felt safe enough not to react. I shrug off his comments and laugh at it, trying to act uninterested but frozen in fear. I had no idea where John's friend Mike was, much less his girlfriend, who actually might know these people. John is watching, waiting for me to say something, which I don't. I don't know why. I don't like the attention. The dude was not attractive, didn't seem fun or cool, just obviously a drunk creep. He starts getting more weird and I say, "Go away, I'm not interested, I have a boyfriend." He said, "Oh well, that's okay." He doesn't seem to mind, getting more strange. Then my boyfriend tells him to get off her. The guy says sorry and goes off to the woods. It's in front of the home. They eventually begin fighting. Now it was the homeowner. He had been passed out in his truck for the past 4 hours, but come in to see a complete stranger choking his friend. 3 guys run up on him. He managed to fight off 2 of them, but the host of the party has him in a headlock. He held him until he's almost unconscious. They fell to the ground with the host on top of him, pressing down on his throat, cutting off his ability to breathe. I try and whack him off but can't do anything. I look up and I can see that he's trying to kill my boyfriend. I then dig my prosthetic knee into his back. John's friends were nowhere to be seen. The party host had finally let off him, and we run to our car. Mike and his girlfriend are close behind, obviously aware of what's happening. We decide to call the cops. Now this is in a place called Rockdale Country, a backwards nasty country town. I didn't realise how horrible it was until we're inside the sheriff's office. They claimed that the reports had gone missing, and nothing ever come of it.
I have this weird compulsion. Whenever I see a door, a window, or virtually any surface that I believe someone could hide behind, I imagine a face peering out at me, staring. I imagine what I could do. What could I do? You will soon find out why I have this phobia. On to the story. I will try my best to remember all the details, but my mind has repressed a lot of it. Around June of 2016, my mother and I were living in a small apartment. There was no basement or attic obviously, but there was one tiny crawl space in the closet floor of my bedroom. I never looked in it. I suppose some people would be overwhelmed with curiosity, but my mind had already imagined all the worst scenarios. I decided to leave whatever dead bodies and ghosts were down there for whoever rented after us. It was a nice apartment, small but perfect for the 2 of us. We lived there for a few peaceful months until the noises started. It was nothing extreme, just the odd bump in the night, and particularly scratching. My mum just brushed it off as rats in the walls, and as long as they stayed in there, I saw no reason to get rid of them. A week or 2 later, I had already grown used to the noise. It became almost comforting in a way. After all, I never really liked silence. That is, until I woke up one night to a different noise, a rolling sound, eerily similar to the sound my closet made when I opened it. I peeked my eyes open and looked over, but I couldn't make out anything in the dark. I thought maybe I saw something move, but I was well aware of how my mind played tricks on me in the dark. There was only one way to find out. I turned on my lamp. I feel like crying just writing this out. It's been almost a year since I've had to record this night. When I turned on the light, I expected to see the closet full of coats, but what I saw was much, much worse. It was an eye, not just an eye, but the entire half of someone's face, barely visible in the tiny crack he had opened. He didn't even react to being caught, no smile, no fear, just watching. My heart has never beat faster than that night. I wish I screamed, or maced him, or anything, but I just stared back, frozen in time until I couldn't hold it in anymore. I began sobbing, loudly. I think I tried to say something along the lines of, "What do you want?" But I was consumed in my crying. He opened the door more. I could now see his entire body, which I don't care to describe as I've spent 2 long years trying to forget that face. Shh. I lost my breath at that. Hearing him made it real. I couldn't pretend this was some weird dream or hallucination anymore. At this, I sat up and pressed my back against the wall. "It's okay, Redacted." He said it so cheerfully, it gave me chills just remembering it. This is when I finally had the courage to run out of the room. This creep knew my name. My effing name. My mum, still half asleep while she called the police, thought I'd just imagined it. Of course, by the time the police got there, he was already long gone. All that was left of him was that damned crawl space. I still never looked inside, though writing this now, I kinda wish I did. Having some sort of proof of this would, I don't know, comfort me I guess. Because at least you would all know that I'm not crazy. Apparently he had been living there, for how long I don't know, but the officers who arrived first on the scene said that there were tally marks inside the crawl space. I don't know how many. I didn't want to know whether he was marking the days or weeks. I just wanted to leave that apartment, and we did. The police never found him, not for certain. They thought they found a homeless man who matched the description, but he was apparently unresponsive. I've always thought they didn't take it all that seriously. They just thought he was a squatter. Even after I told them he knew my name, they thought that given how long he had seemingly been squatting, he had probably just heard my name through the floorboards. Since that night, he's been the face I always see when there's an open door or closet. It's grown more distorted as time goes on, but I can always make out a part of his pursed lips, as if he's still shushing me, even now. It's gotten easier with time, but I don't think it will ever leave me completely. Anyway, I guess we didn't actually have rats.
When I was a teenager, I had this strange thing that I would just take night walks in areas with no lights, mostly forested paths. My logic then was facing fears would make me feel better. One night, it was pitch black. Couldn't really see far. So I was doing my thing, and I bump into someone else. I only see him at the last moment. I scream and started running back, only to hear him screaming back at me to come back, chasing me now. I can hear the sound of his footsteps. They eventually become more distant, and I did a Forrest Gump and just kept running. I never went for a night forest walk again. I know I shouldn't have been out there at that time, but the fact that there was a fully grown man there, looking to be in his 50s or 60s doing the same thing, who chased after me just does not make sense. A few years after my father had graduated from SCU and my mother had graduated from TCU, they both had jobs at a small company in Fort Worth. Having met at a few company parties, they finally got married, and my father gets a job in Colorado for a small but growing engineering company. So off they go, packing up and moving from Fort Worth to Colorado. Getting in a car with these few belongings, they start to make their way to Colorado. Now I'm not sure where they are, but they take a road instead of a large intersected highway. My mother and father decided to take a smaller not so travelled route on the highway on their final stretch back home to my father's hometown, to then catch Highway 14 to their new home. Having driven all day and it being the middle of night, my dad has the idea of pulling off to the side of the road to sleep for a few hours before waking up and finishing the journey. Now there's no rest stops whatsoever, as they're on a highway in the middle of nowhere. Now my mum agreed that maybe they should stop, but after 20 minutes she wasn't able to sleep, so instead of sleeping, she said she'd drive, allowing my father to be able to rest up a bit. Just to reiterate, this is not a so travelled upon highway. There are no lights and my parents are in the middle of nowhere from the nearest city or town. Not a mile or two down the road, my mum notices something on the side of the road. As she gets closer, she notices it's just a single man in the middle of nowhere with no lights or anything, just walking on the side of the road in the direction of where my parents are parked. There was no broken down car or anything, just this man with nothing but miles around him. My parents wanted to stop and speak to him, but they got very shook. My parents didn't bring it up much, and they've ever wondered what happened to him, or what had happened to them if they'd both fallen asleep in their car at the side of the road. Something about the whole situation was just off, and why that guy was out there on his own just doesn't make sense. His intentions couldn't have been good.